The Nebraska legislature completed one of its most contentious tasks last week, redistricting. What will be the impact on our state and how could it change our elections? Plus, the latest on COVID-19. That's tonight on Speaking of Nebraska. Thanks for joining us on Speaking of Nebraska. I'm Nebraska Public Media News Director Dennis Kellogg. The 2020 census told us Nebraska's urban and rural divide only widened. In a special session, the officially nonpartisan unicameral had to adjust for that change in population. The legislature passed 6 new maps that will serve as guides to Nebraska elections for the next decade. Public hearings were held and debate was plentiful. Tonight, we'll discuss what happened with the 2 senators in charge of the redistricting committee who came at it from opposite sides of the political aisle. But first, for more on what happened in the past weeks at the state capitol, here's Nebraska Public Media News legislative reporter Fred Knapp.
What's really striking about this session was the compressed time frame. Usually the legislature gets the census results in January and they have all session to make their decisions. This time, because of COVID, they didn't get the results until August. And so they had a 2-week special session to get all their work done. Speaker Hildreth even at one point threatened to call the whole thing off and make them do it in January, which would have postponed the May primary election. Well, that didn't happen. And the big controversy centered on the Omaha area 2nd Congressional District, which is competitive both for Congress and for the so-called blue dot, the one electoral vote that the Democrats have actually eked out in an otherwise red state. In 2020, Joe Biden won the Electoral College vote in the 2nd District by about 22,000 votes. Senator Linehan produced a map that would have decreased that by about 6,000. Senator Wayne, the Democratic vice chair of the committee, offered a map that would have increased it by about 7,500. What eventually resulted was a map that, by my calculation, would have decreased Biden's lead by about 2,000. Wouldn't have changed the outcome in this case, but could be significant for future elections.
Joining us now, the chair of the redistricting committee, Senator Lou Ann Linehan of Elkhorn, and the vice chair of that same committee, Senator Justin Wayne of Omaha. Thank you both for being here with us on Speaking of Nebraska. I want to ask you, this is a process when we talk about redistricting that was supposed to take, or normally takes the entire session or a lot of the session. This time, because of the delay in the census data, we had to do it in 3 weeks or maybe a little bit more. How did you think it came out? What's your overall grade on it?
I think we did a fine job. It was very difficult, but the other thing, when you're in session and you have the whole session, you've got a lot of other balls to handle. This was the only thing we had to do, so people were focused. So I think 3 weeks was long enough.
And you're satisfied with the outcome?
I am satisfied with the outcome.
Senator Wayne, you called it the most transparent redistricting process in our state's history. Why did you think that?
I thought that because of the data we put out. I mean, although we talk about transparency, it's about getting data out. And we got the data out, we put it on the internet, we got it out. Now, there might be some issues about how long it was out there, because sometimes maps were changing and the public might not have had enough time to digest it. But if they're looking at their district, they had time to digest it. We had a whole weekend plus another additional Monday. So we had about 72 hours for people to look at their district. We got a lot of feedback. We made small technical changes, except for one area. But overall, it was the most transparent. And part of it is because I watched the last process 10 years ago, and everything was done in closed session. We were the first group to do, pretty much except for our first meeting, everything was in a regular session so committees could see, the public could be there to watch the committees interact. And again, the data, we had more data, we had shape files, we had everything out on the internet. Now, could we 10 years from now absolutely do better? I believe so. But looking back historically, this was the most transparent.
And in the end, can you say you're satisfied?
I'm satisfied with where we came out at. I think when people look at their districts and what we try to do as far as preserving community interest and preserving the core, I think we did a good job.
So let's take a look, and let's start with the U.S. congressional districts. Nebraska has 3. The first represents much of eastern Nebraska, including Lincoln, Fremont, Columbus, and Norfolk. The second is home to Omaha. The third is the rest of the state. The largest change came in the second, where Saunders County was added to the second, and much of Sarpy County was placed into the first district. So, Senator Linehan, was there ever a point in the process where you thought that you wouldn't get it done, that we weren't going to get to the finish line, that we couldn't reach that ultimate compromise?
Oh, there were moments like that. But it wasn't within the committee. It was, the committee I always thought was up to the task, but it's keeping everybody else informed and keeping them informed of what's really going on versus all the rumors, which is always difficult in the legislature. There were 9 of us on the committee, but then you have 40 other senators and other stakeholders that we needed to converse with. So that, it was, well, I thought we could get it done, and I always had great confidence in Senator Wayne's ability for us to get it done.
So she had confidence in you. Did you think it was going to get done?
I had confidence in Chairwoman Linehan. The issue for us was the legislative maps. The congressional maps, it was clear that we heard from the community when we went around the state that they wanted to keep Douglas County whole, and they wanted to minimize as much as we could to split in Sarpy County. And so that was a fair compromise with the congressional map, is we achieved what I would say our goal of what the community wanted was to keep Douglas County whole. And that was the main focus, and that's what we achieved.
And we're going to get into that a little bit, but I want to ask you also, this is a nonpartisan unicameral. Do you think the process in the end was partisan or was bipartisan, or did politics end up coming into play?
Redistricting itself across the country is the most political thing you can do. But what you saw, I think, out of both maps was people from both sides of the aisle voting for them. So I think that shows you that there's some nonpartisans in some nature. But the reality is there's no way for you to get community input and not be partisan. You can't look at somebody and we had one person show up with a political shirt on. Do we just discount their testimony of what they think is right because they have a political affiliation? I don't think that's fair. So I think the process and the community input, even if it was totally independent, has politics in it just by the nature of being transparent to the community and getting community input, because the community themselves are involved in politics.
And even though the unicameral is nonpartisan, we should say Senator Wayne is a registered Democrat, Senator Linehan a registered Republican. Senator Linehan, did you feel like it was, in the end, as bipartisan as it possibly could be?
I think when we got to the end, it was, yes. But as Senator Wayne has said, it is partisan by its very nature. It always is partisan. And you can't, I mean, our hearings, we heard about the blue dot and the blue dot. And so it wasn't, the public is partisan, probably more now today than it's ever been in my lifetime. More like hardline, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. So that's hard for the legislature. You can't ignore that if you're in political office. You cannot ignore the realities that's going on in Nebraska and around the rest of the country.
I mean, and just to piggyback off of that,
Sure.
It's important to understand that parties are a collection of ideas and like a marketplace of ideas, right? That you believe in, that's what you sign up for. If we were truly nonpartisan, then we would all, after we win our election, change to independent. But nobody in the legislature has done that. Only person who's ran independent in the last 40 years was Senator Chambers, who was there. So we come into it with politics. But for us, it was truly about preserving the core and keeping the communities of interest. And if you can do that, that's how I think at the end we got around the partisanship.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how we got to that compromise proposal. Senator Linehan, your original proposal would have kept Sarpy County whole but cut Douglas County. It didn't overcome the filibuster. Douglas County hadn't been split before. So why was that the preferred option for you?
Well, it was Douglas County, the growth there. You're going to have a situation where it may at some point be enough to be a whole congressional district. And I did feel, I didn't grow up, I live in Douglas County now, I didn't grow up there. There was kind of the thing that, well, I think there was one of the editorials, the rest of it, I do feel sorry for all the other counties in the state of Nebraska when one county seems to be so dominant. And I do think Sarpy County had a legitimate complaint that somehow they can be chopped up 10 different ways, but we can't touch Douglas County. So I thought it was worth looking at. Clearly the public did not like that idea. So I think that's where we came back with the next map.
So, and you mentioned that because the committee held hearings across the state, and in the Omaha hearing, you heard a lot of testifiers saying, don't split Douglas County. How much did that testimony play into your decision to move towards the compromise?
Well, not only the testimony, but I didn't really believe that there would be very many politicians that lived in Douglas County that would vote for that map. And that is enough to filibuster in the legislature, so.
Senator Wayne, you had proposed keeping Douglas County whole and adding back parts of Papillion and Bellevue, so you would split Sarpy County. Your proposal wasn't voted out of committee. Why was that the best option in your eyes?
It was the starting option. I think what you saw was both maps that had a starting option, and then you work on what you can come out with. That's the nature of what we do when we're making sausage and the laws, or in this case, redistricting. I thought it was the best option because Douglas County and part of the city of Bellevue, they are very much community interest, same people. They shop in each community. You drive across 24th Street or 14th or 10th Street, and you go into Bellevue. You don't see a demarcation point like, oh, now we're in Sarpy County. But what was interesting, and what I think people need to know going forward, is you have the three fastest growing districts, Sarpy, Lancaster, and Douglas County. And there were maps that we looked at that had them all in different congressional districts. Because in 10 years, if that's the trend, that's what's going to happen. So we had 14 different maps that we were looking at, and we ended up settling on where we settled on.
And as Sarpy County did end up getting split, and as Senator Linehan mentioned, that you probably have Sarpy County residents out there saying, why is it okay to split us and not split Douglas County? How do you answer it?
Well, the answer is we did one of the things that we committed to, and when I say we, I'm talking about the 4 Democrats are on the committee. We were adamant about we were going to try to keep people in their districts. We weren't going to remove incumbents. Well, Congressman Bacon lives in Sarpy County. So even my map and even the other versions of my map always kept Congressman Bacon in office. So that's how we got there. It's not a secret. That was one of our core principles going in, is that we were trying to keep incumbents in their district. And we can't say that's good for legislature, but not good for Congress.
And Senator Linehan, a lot was made of the keeping Congress Bacon in his district. Was too much made of that, or was that an important part of it?
Congressman Bacon has proved beyond any doubt I have that he's quite capable congressman, and he's very popular. And I think if we had done otherwise, it would have been a very significant backlash from the community.
Well, the congressional maps weren't the only ones being discussed. When it came to the state legislature, the competition was less Republican versus Democrat and more rural versus urban. Again, more from Fred Knapp of Nebraska Public Media News.
Because of the population shifts from the rural west to the urban east, a district arguably had to shift, and that's what happened. The district, now represented by Senator Matt Williams of Gothenburg, was divided up among the surrounding districts, and a new district was created in Sarpy County in the rapidly growing Omaha suburbs. Other than that, the other redistricting for the Public Service Commission, the State Board of Education, the Board of Regents, and Judicial Nomination and Retention, those were relatively non-controversial and passed with overwhelming margins.
So back to the legislative maps, Senator Wayne, let's start with you. The new districts cut out District 36 from Dawson, Custer, and Buffalo counties. It's now, that new district is in Sarpy County. Are you happy with that? How do you think it turned out?
I think it turned out well for the state. We were trying to make sure that we had one person, one vote. In order to do that, we had a shift. But at the same time, there's some constitutional guidelines we have, which is we have to try to preserve county lines at all costs. But I do want to make a statement how important the media is in this. When this redistricting came out in the beginning, a lot of media ran with the idea that there were two districts that were supposed to move, one here and one to Lincoln. That was never the case. It was about 1.1, And the problem was where that population growth was around Senator Linehan's, Senator Day's, and Senator DeBoer's district. There was no other option but to move that into the Omaha area. And that's what we did, and I think it worked out well. I think if you look at Douglas and Sarpy County, we kept a lot of those community interests whole. If you look at Lincoln, we did the best to keep our community interests whole. And then when you look at the rural Nebraska, we kept, by moving Custer County into 43, where it used to be 10 years ago, we kept those community interests whole. So I think we did a very good job.
Senator Linehan, did you get pushback from rural senators? I know Senator Groney probably wasn't happy with the way this turned out, but are there senators out there who just felt we should have done more for rural Nebraska?
There are. And I have empathy for rural Nebraska, but the situation was we did not have, my first map had us taking a seat that was closer to Lincoln and moving that and then kind of shifting all of them. But they have to grow. It is unfortunate, and I think it just points to that now when we go back in January, we need to figure out a way to help rural Nebraska grow too, which helps the whole state. Helps Omaha, helps Lincoln, helps Sarpy County. We can't have this ever evolving fewer people in western part of the state. It's not good for our state.
So District 36 representative is Senator Matt Williams, who had said at the very beginning he didn't want to lose that representation. But he said on the floor that you had a phone call or a conversation with him, and after that he seemed to change his mind. What did you say to him?
Well, I'm not going to go there. But I will say this about Senator Williams. He cared about his district very, very much. He cared about his home county, Dawson County, very much. And I agreed with him that we would keep Dawson County whole. Wherever it went, it would all be together. We wouldn't split his cities apart because they all have communities that work together. So it was a huge thing for him to step up because we were not, that knock on the door is not welcome by any state senator. And I am very, very grateful that he was willing to do that.
So in the end, it did amount to compromise. Is there any concerns that you have with the final maps we have now for the legislature and for Congress that somebody didn't get not what they wanted, but what they deserved?
I don't have that right now. I don't have any concerns right now. I do want to point to, it wasn't just Chairwoman Linehan having the conversation. I had to make that same phone call when I introduced my map to remove Hughes from his district or move his district over. So those are always tough calls to have. He got his call at 7:30 in the morning. As I said, hey, in an hour it's coming out. But so at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with the maps and where they are. I think hindsight 2020 is always going to be there. There's areas that we probably could have improved on, and I think we'll make sure we have a detailed list of things that the next group can improve on to make sure they don't make the same hiccups that we might have made.
At one point, Speaker Hilger said, I'm going to set a deadline, and if we don't reach the compromise by this deadline, we're going to just go home and we're going to do this in January. How serious of a threat do you think that was, and how much did it motivate all of the senators to get things done?
It was a very serious threat, and it motivated us greatly. Nobody wanted to wait. Well, it was painful, so when you're going through something painful and you're almost to the end, you don't want to start over later. And legislatures, by their very nature, never get anything done until there's a timeline. They just don't. I don't care if it's in D.C. or if it's here. It's legislatures, because you're always negotiating until the very end, so you're going to use as much time as you can to get as much as you can for your constituents. So without a timeline, we'd still be here.
So in 10 years, this legislature gets to do it all over again. Senator Wayne, you have said that if we establish an independent commission, that's against the Constitution. That's not an option, really. But if there was an amendment that was passed, how do you feel about that option? Should we do it the way we did it, or should we go to an independent commission?
So if you look across the state, the independent commissions are appointed, and they're often recommended by one person from the Senate majority, one person from the Senate minority, House Representative majority, House Whip minority, and so they're still bipartisan. We have a 5-4 makeup on our committee. More importantly, if you do like Iowa, there is no community input. They have really staff just draw it, and it's an up or down vote, and Iowa just rejected theirs. So what's the backup plan? Well, in Iowa, the Supreme Court draws their plan. Well, underneath Nebraska, you would have the same constituent saying, such and such appointed these Supreme Court judges, they drew it, it's still partisan. So I'm okay with the system we have. We just have to have a longer timeline, and we have to allow the public to digest things a little bit more. But I think an independent commission cannot truly be independent if you're going to engage the community, because the community by themselves are not independent. They have a voice, they have a belief, they think certain things should be one way or the other, and so you're still back to the same thing, in my opinion.
Senator Linehan, it was messy at times. Do you still want to keep it this way, or is an independent commission an option?
I agree wholeheartedly with Justin Wayne. I don't think there is such a thing as an independent commission, because as soon as you have politicians appointing people, nobody's going to believe they're completely independent. So when you lose the trust, so we are, even with term limits, we are held accountable by our constituents. So I think if we did something that was outrageous, we would feel it at the ballot box or any future office we might run for. So I like the idea of the people doing the map being elected by Nebraskans to represent Nebraskans.
As we wind down here just a little bit, I want to end with a tweet. Senator Wayne, you tweeted during the start of the process, while redistricting can be polarizing, let's take a moment to appreciate that Nebraska chose a woman and a black man to lead our efforts to protect our country's most sacred right. So after completing the process, how do you feel about it? I mean, do you think it went, the way you thought it would?
I mean, not 100% the way I thought I would, but it still makes me tear up, because at that moment in that tweet and Facebook post, I mean, we were beyond frustrated. And it took somebody outside of in the room saying, hey, you guys are making history. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you guys are leading this for the first time ever. And it just makes you step back and say, we may not get everything right. We may not be 100% perfect, but we are striving to be better. And the fact that we're doing this, or that we did this, means that Nebraska and this country is still making strides to be better.
So I have to ask you, you've submitted your name for a district judgeship in Douglas County. And if that happens, it would be a Republican governor appointing you as a Democrat. But if that happens, and I know there's a lot of things that have to happen before that would even be a possibility, but if that happens and you look back, is this the crowning achievement of your time in the legislature, the redistricting?
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. The crowning achievement would be the legislation we passed for economic development last year for North Omaha. The fact that we did affordable housing and set aside $18 million for North Omaha. My community, we have pushed for a lot. And so that's part of where I'm at. It's like we have done a lot. And my legislation, I came in with about 100 things that I want to do for North Omaha, and every year we are checking off a box. And so we have a plan, but my crowning achievement would be the affordable housing and the economic development tools that we are trying to do to change North Omaha.
We'll see how that plays out.
And I've said this before, and people in the committee hear this. Redistricting hasn't been the reason why North Omaha is in poverty. It's other legislation. So while redistricting is important to a lot of people, for my community, the community I represent, economic development is the #1 thing.
We'll see how that plays out. Senator Linehan, just 30 seconds or so here, but as we look ahead to the next session, taxes are going to play a very big part of it. As a matter of fact, you think we can make some real changes. Why do you think that now when it hasn't happened in the past?
Well, because we've got a lot of experience, and I'm concerned about, we've got 12 senators that are there now that won't be there when we come back in 2 years. Then our class is 17 senators. We're in a good place financially with revenues are up. So if this morning I heard Speaker Hildreth give a speech about thinking big. I think we're at that place where we need to really think big. What can we really do? And taxes are very much tied to economic development.
All right, we'll be watching that as well. Senator Lou Ann Linehan and Senator Justin Wayne, thank you both for being with us. We really appreciate it. This interview and tonight's program are available on our website. Just go to nebraskapublicmedia.org/Speaking of Nebraska and join the conversation on social media. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Nebraska Public Media News. The COVID-19 pandemic is now over a year and a half old in Nebraska. Here to discuss the latest pandemic details is Dr. Josue Gutierrez, a family practice physician at Saline Medical Specialties in Crete. Dr. Gutierrez, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me speaking of such an important topic once again.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we did this last April at that point. And when we did that, we had one situation, and now the Delta variant kind of drove another wave of cases. But it appears that the surge is slowing, maybe even receding. So overall, what's your take on how we're doing with the pandemic?
Like you said, the Delta variant really threw a wrench in the whole situation. You know, things were slowing down, but then Delta variant came in twice as virulent and really easily spread. So that really, caught a lot of people by surprise. But the good thing is it is slowing. In Lancaster County, there's been very good things happening with the mask mandates and things like that have really helped with those things. Right now, our hospitals are quite full, but we are seeing most of these cases in the rural areas that are actually sending a lot of their patients to the metro areas in Nebraska to those hospitals, and that's where most of the foci of spread is at this time, mostly in the rural areas.
Yeah, and cases may be looking better. COVID hospitalizations are better too, yet hospitals are more full because we're continuing to do those procedures. Those have never stopped. The governor's declared a staffing emergency, but as a state, do you think we're doing enough?
As a state, I think we are getting there. I think we always have to be cognizant that social distancing, vaccines. I think that we are near that 70% threshold, but we should continue to push further to get that 70%. I think vaccinations are going to be important for Nebraska for us to truly get better.
And when we talk about vaccinations, we're hearing more about booster shots now out for those 65 and older and high-risk individuals. How important do you think the booster shots are?
Right now, the studies have shown that the Pfizer, some of the declining antibody levels, so that's why the boosters are important for those people at high risk. So I would encourage those patients to actually get that booster shot. And right now, only Pfizer is the one that has been approved for this booster shot. In the future, Moderna and Johnson & Johnson will be coming up to the FDA here in the next week, and then also vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds will also be seen in the next 2 or 3, or be heard in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Hopefully, in a month and a half, we'll have some type of vaccination for children.
And should parents have any concern about a vaccination for their kids?
At this point, there has been no real adverse outcomes to the pediatric population, so I think they should feel safe that this will be safe for their kids as well.
Dr. Gutierrez, you work a lot with the Hispanic community, and COVID has certainly impacted people of communities of color. And tell me, how do you think they're being impacted right now, the Hispanic community in particular?
I think the Hispanic community has always have a tendency to look at things and be very careful, very wary about vaccinations, things like that. So I think that there has been some hesitancy with the Hispanic community with vaccines, and getting through that hesitancy will require local leaders to truly talk to their population and truly talk to their neighbors about how safe this vaccine truly is.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we're also getting into flu season, so there's talk about the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine. Any concerns with getting them both?
No concerns at all. You can actually get both of them at the same time, and it will be okay. You can have some more flu-like symptoms, but at this time, they're both safe to get.
That's good to hear. Well, Dr. Josue Gutierrez, a family practice physician at Saline Medical Specialties in Crete, thanks again so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and always please continue to do social distancing and vaccines. Vaccines are very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gutierrez. And for the latest on pandemic news, don't forget you can visit our website, nebraskapublicmedia.org/coronavirus. That's all for this week on Speaking of Nebraska. Thanks to Senators Lou Ann Linehan and Justin Wayne and Dr. Josue Gutierrez. Next week, join us for a discussion about agriculture with former U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, U.S. Senator, and Nebraska Governor Mike Johanns. Until then, I'm Dennis Kellogg. We'll see you next week.